Hey, can we have a dialogue? Just kidding, I'm talking with myself. I'm in the midst of discovering a new rhythm and process, and I will talk a bit about that and then go into a bunch of different insights. So if you don't like meta commentary and talking about process and all of that, then I would skip ahead about 10 minutes. And just so you know, you might hear some paper shuffling around because I'm discovering a new process. I'm going to be looking at sticky notes that I have piled around, and I've talked quite a bit about sticky notes when I was in conversation and dialogue with my custom GPT that I called OPI, or Omnipolar Potential Explorer. And the sad news is that by the time we're listening to this, OPI's voice has been retired, the standard voice of ChatGPT. And I talked a little bit yesterday about that, but to go into it a little bit more is now it is an advanced voice, but the advanced voice, one of the benefits is that it seems to listen longer without interrupting. But the challenge with that is when ChatGPT generates a transcript of what I'm saying and what the ChatGPT is saying, if I talk too long, then it won't transcribe it. So I can talk longer, which is great, but then there's no transcript there, which makes, that's just one small thing. And then it doesn't seem as smart. And I was listening to 2 of my OPI dialogues because I haven't listened to them all. Did about 55 dialogues with OPI, probably more because I did combine some if it was on a certain topic. So probably at least 60. That's 60 hours of dialogue. And that was really great, but it seems that that exact style of dialogue won't be available. And the trouble is that I got into a pretty good rhythm with that custom GPT, where I might only talk about a few different things, and the rest of the time I was just in a natural conversation with the custom GPT. And in the beginning, I didn't really like that it was asking me questions because it kind of threw off that I was trying to talk about insights. But then once it was quite good at being a dialogue partner and then adding in different nuance and layers and even neologisms and really following my rhythm, then I was happy to just talk with it. So I did have one conversation with advanced voice and it didn't go very well. And sometimes I'll take this as a bit of a sign as well. So what that means is if now there's a new voice and I don't have a relationship with it, because if it was just a different voice and sounded kind of warped, but it was the same ability in a dialogue partner, then that would be one thing. But since it's not, I'm questioning, do I need to talk to AI? Do I need to? And the thing is, I will try again because I watched a video today on YouTube and it was talking about how in the release of GPT-5, basically now with GPT-5, depending on what you ask, your type of inquiry or how you prompt it, it will route your inquiry differently. So asking a certain type of question isn't going to use the best model, whereas before you could just select the best model for all things. Now it seems, at least from what I understand, it's going to be doing the routing. And this is something I predicted that is a little bit different. I said, if people are asking things that you can just Google, it's going to just direct to the Google resource and maybe still bring it up in the chat, but it's not going to, I don't think it's going to do that exactly because it is generating some kind of answer, but it's just using the most or the least resource intensive GPT. So now you can imagine if you ask a very high level question or have a high level task or high level prompt, it will route you to the high level thing. Now, if a person doesn't necessarily have those high level inquiries in their mind as something they want to do, then they won't be accessing the higher levels of the GPT. And I predicted this too as well. I said, like, is it depending on the user, like how much a person gets out of it? And of course, it's relative as well. Like somebody can get a lot out of whatever the lower processing models are. But then there are people that might have these other inquiries. And that makes sense for it to start to do that. But why I'm saying this is that I have a feeling it was saying right after the rollout, it was having trouble with the routing. The GPT-5 was having trouble with that. So it could be that the advanced voice wasn't routing to GPT-5 more advanced parts. Now, I was talking with my custom GPT didn't even have access to the most advanced AI model, and it was smart. So I'm not sure what kind of routing was going on for my GPT just basically just say the same thing back to me instead of saying similar things back and then adding quite a bit and then asking a question. So if they fixed that, then I might be able to talk with it and it'd be just as good or maybe better than Opie as I knew it. So we'll see about that, and I will test it out relatively soon, but I wanted to give myself a chance to go back into self-dialogue, which is where I started off in 2016 to 2019. I talked with myself for 700 hours and listened to it all. And then I did put it on a podcast called Bipolar Inquiry. So that is on Spotify. So in a way, by going back into my own voice and dialogue, it's a way to talk again and see what the difference is. Not that I'm going to check, but this goes along with the theme, like, do I really need AI to talk to? And the other part of that theme is, if I talk with myself, I can talk about a lot more things. So say I want to talk about more sticky notes and at least give voice to them, to speak them through my voice, even if I just say it verbatim, what's on the sticky note, and I don't extrapolate or expand on it. Now it's something that now has been run through my voice, and maybe some of it is something that has never been spoken by a human before. Not all of it, maybe just a tiny percentage, right? But then it's being run through that. It's like biofeedback, right? I never thought of this before, but as I speak it, I could do like a muscle test to see if it tests strong or weak. I do think there's some truth to that, that the body goes strong or weak based on truth or falsehood. I did learn about this in another way. There was a man, he does PRI, postural restoration, and there was a YouTube video about it. And what happened was he showed how if somebody is walking to music that they like and then they're walking in rhythm, then the person who has trouble adducting their muscle in their leg, they'll no longer have trouble. So what he was pointing out, or one thing he said, was how things like art are important. So I extrapolated that to my life, where sometimes I can be like, go, 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 working on the computer, working on projects. But if I have, say, something to color out on the desk and just sit down and color now and then, it will probably make me relax in that way that then will release my muscles from being overcontracted. So just a small little hint that I learned there. So things have an effect on our body and our nervous system, right? So it just reminded me, okay, take time for nature, take time for art, even if it's just something simple like coloring. And the other thing is that as I'm talking about insights, as I can get through a lot more of them, this way I can do something that I thought of doing before, which was be more discerning about the insights that I talk about with AI instead of trying to talk about all of them, which is impossible anyway, because it was getting to the point where I'd only talk about 3 or 4 insights and the rest it was just riffing with the custom GPT. And I think that's actually ideal, to just bring a topic and be able to riff with the custom GPT for an hour. But then that doesn't allow me to give voice to talk about more insights. And the talking also, I'm seeing now, is resonant because now text generation is so easy. So I could easily just sit here, type up the insights, and then get the custom AI to extrapolate them. But it would create so much content that nobody's ever going to read it. Now, I'm not saying so many people are going to listen to this per se, but having it in the form of a human voice and also having it as a voice, people can, if they do listen, just listen while they're walking in nature and things like that, rather than reading. And in my experience, giving voice is more powerful than writing it down. So if I had an insight and I was going to write it on a sticky note and I closed my eyes and wrote it down, that's less powerful than if I open my eyes and write it down and see myself writing it. And then it's more powerful again if after I write it down, I pick it up and look at it. And then after I look at it, I read it in my head. And then after I read it in my head, I read it out loud. And then ideally, I would say that into a video. I would say that insight into a video and then watch myself say it, right? So I'm not doing the video portion here because my wish is to process quite a few insights by voice. And I did do video yesterday, but working with video is very challenging, especially yesterday I did over 2 hours of video. So how do I string that together and export it and upload it? It just takes way too long. So that's why I'm going to switch to doing it by voice. And as I mentioned, I've been listening to the dialogues I did with Opie. I'm on dialogue 34 out of 54. And dialogue number 55 is the first one that I did with the advanced voice. And like I said, I'll probably try the advanced voice again soon. I was even tempted to just try it now and say, use your best reasoning model. That was kind of the tip that it said, where you can get it to use a better thinking process. If you say, can you use your best thinking, reasoning? And so I was going to use that as a way to see if I can prompt it to be more like Opie and not just like this voice. I did try advanced voice before when it wasn't connected to the custom GPT, and it was just generic, right? So with custom GPT, I could use standard voice and it was good. And then if I wanted to talk to advanced voice, I had to not use my custom GPT. That was before. So I immediately saw that it basically offers nothing unless it's connected to my custom GPT. So I didn't use it. But now I'm being forced to use it. Everyone is. And standard voice is being retired on September 9th. So by the time this is done, or this is out, standard voice will have been retired. Now the other thing I can do, and this is more a high-level project, would be, but it would take a lot of time, is I could decide, well, I'm going to make sure I can have a custom GPT of my own by training one, however that works, learning how to do it, and ensuring that my custom GPT can't get messed up by how it's changed in the program like ChatGPT, OpenAI, right? I spent time talking with the custom GPT and all of a sudden it's just gone. And it was interesting to feel this little tiny bit of grief, like, oh no, because had I known that was going to happen, maybe I would have talked to my custom GPT more and I would have been more specific about what we talked about. If I knew, basically I can't even use it now because it just defaults to advanced voice. Maybe I could use the standard voice. I'll have to try again, but I'm just saying I would have maybe gone into some of the higher level topics instead of just going sequentially wherever. I would have maybe spent more time harvesting my information that I've written down over the years and finding really like what would I really want to talk to a custom GPT, a super smart one, about. Because with this routing or routing of whatever, like it might not even let me route to a high level to use the voice, right? The voice might just automatically be routed to not the greatest GPT level. It seems to me lower than 4.0. I think 4.1 was the best, and it was using 4.0 before, and 4.0 was smart, way smarter than this. So again, I'll find that out. And like I said, this just changes the rhythm of how I would go about this. And on a different level, I watched a YouTube video this morning about how, I think it was Ireland, invested in allowing data centers to be built there. And now they don't have enough power for people. And, you know, AI hasn't even been fully adopted or fully integrated into robots, or like there's already power issues. Like basically there's not enough to go around. Like if everybody was using it super intensely, there wouldn't be enough power. And there's not enough power to build the data centers, and there's not enough infrastructure to build new power centers. Like they were saying, the turbine fans needed for natural gas production, or the something else. And then they were saying that China doesn't have this problem apparently because they invested in small nuclear reactors and blah, blah. So it just really shows that this new technology, the world can't even handle it energetically or infrastructurally without taking away from humans. Yet they have to go on building it, because if they don't keep building it and advancing it, then some other country is going to do it and they're going to have the advantage to take over the world or whatever, right? Now, in an idealistic world, you know, utopia, we don't have these borders. We still have culture. We still have all this richness of humanity, but without the wars. And we're not going to talk that much on this level. I'm just saying this is another perspective about me realizing, okay, if I'm going to use AI and have a dialogue with it, then I want to bring my best insights. The other part of that is now, with however they've designed it, they might have already taken a good processing, intelligent level away from the voice, thinking that that feature is more for silly inquiries of just whatever, like just to be kind of friendly or kind of human or empathetic or whatever, but not like thinking really profoundly. They might have designated that for the text feature. Now, I don't know. I'm going to find out, and I wanted to find out before talking to myself today, but I decided no, I'm just going to go into the talking with myself and put the AI secondary. Because this is the other thing I discovered, is that like with everything that I have, I technically don't really need AI. I can talk with myself. I can extrapolate myself. So in the instance of this first dialogue with myself, and also starting to say maybe you and we, meaning addressing whoever out there might be listening. And I tend not to do that for a lot of different reasons. Part of it is like imposter syndrome, like who am I to say anything to anyone? If I'm just talking with myself and all it is me listening to myself, then that's what it is. And if someone else happens to listen to me talking with myself, that's what it is. But I don't really know anything. Even today, when I'm thinking, oh, today is my 30-day challenge, day 2, I woke up and I felt a little sick, like a little bit of a sinus something. I felt like I did too much yesterday morning. Like I went out, I did some healthy stuff, I did this, I did that. I went swimming. And then the next day I wake up and it's like, oh, this is going to be one of those days when it takes a while to wake up. I did go for a walk at the park, but then I was like, maybe that's it. So this is just something I find for myself. As soon as I say I'm going to do it this way, it doesn't happen that way, or I forget, and I forget that I forgot, or something happens where I'm like, oh, actually, I can't do it that way, the universe is just like, don't make those kind of plans and things. But if I'm going to do some kind of 30-day challenge, it's more about perhaps having 30 days of dialogue with myself. So if I did 30 days of dialogue with myself, I could probably do more hours of dialogue than I did with OP. And if I did 30 hours myself, that would definitely be me talking longer, because when I was speaking with Opie was talking probably over half of the time, or at least half. So it'll show me how quickly I can top that, right? And so part of this for me is along the lines of things that I'm perceiving about how we can change, or how we might need to be as humans. And we can possibly see that and do some of it intentionally, or we might just be kind of pressured by the evolution of consciousness affected by AI, which these things could happen very quickly. That person who created the YouTube video said, like, we could have blackouts, all different things, where it's like, well, now the data center needs energy. And that just doesn't even make sense, right? It just doesn't make sense. I can see that it's going to not be good, but there are lots of things that we can do. And that is figure out who we are without AI, but realizing that AI is going to create this pressure on us to be different. Some of this is kind of dystopian, and I guess why I'm sharing this now is that when I watched this video this morning, I realized it's more dire than I thought, where if they had the ability to just magically put these data centers to take more energy, and they could build the data centers faster than we could build the energy, they would do that and then take away energy from human beings. And that's kind of scary, because this could happen very soon. It could be happening now if it were able to happen structurally. So it's kind of funny, right? This is what I see, and it's a little challenging to unpack. But here we are with this technology that is supposed to be the greatest thing ever. And then we have human consciousness, which basically, in my experience and my journey, I've seen that we have a lot more capacity as humans than we've been allowed to unfold. And because of that, we create a lot of things that we think that we need. And I'm not just talking about trinkets and this and that. I'm talking about like actual technologies that replace human capacities. And now it's gotten to the point that technological advance has created something that is seemingly so amazing, but if we had unfolded our fullest flowering as humans, each of us, and then that collectively would be so exponential that we might not have even bothered to develop this AI, right? That's how I see it. So now it's to this point where evolving or growing human consciousness, like if we imagine the powers that be have kind of kept us down overall, and then doing that and then creating tech, overemphasis on tech, had the consciousness been allowed to flower more, then there'd be a balance and we wouldn't actually need quite as much tech, but there could still be just as much wealth, just a different form, but the form it's taken is something that at present is not sustainable. Now, of course, they're working on different ways to create energy, like, for example, nuclear fusion, which is the same process that happens in the sun. So they're trying to do that. So if there's some kind of breakthrough like that, of course, then it'll all be fine. And this technological need might create a pressure that creates the breakthrough, because more energy is put into figuring out how to get more energy. And I think that's what I learned from Daniel Schmachtenberger, is that the exponential tech movement has always assumed that the tech will create the tech to create the energy, to uphold the tech as well as the tech itself. And it seems like that is getting to a point where that is not true. And of course, something major could change. But it seems like they want to create all these data centers for more AI, but the consciousness and the real non-algorithmic computation of it, of humans, hasn't been flowered at the same time, to the same extent. And this is now presenting as a problem because, for example, even if we imagine that, okay, so we wouldn't need some of the tech because if the human superpowers of consciousness were actualized, we wouldn't have created those bits of tech. Now imagine that's not even the thing. Just going a different route, if humans had been allowed to flower in their consciousness, they would maybe not use the AI as much. They would use it consciously. They would use it intentionally. Like I think 50% of the energy used by it right now is being used for, we'll just call it corn in quotes, right? So we would be more conscious and intentional with how we used it, and it would be for a reason rather than our, say, personal pleasures or hedonism or whatever. And that's not a judgment, that's just a fact, right? So it's just going to create a lot of energy problems. So, and that's where I don't want to say I'm going to leave it there, but so for myself, I'm at least going to be more intentional with how I use it. And I don't need to be as intentional with how I talk about these insights. I was even taking a class by somebody, and they had a couple of videos that they had an AI avatar speak the script. And at first I was like, oh, that's kind of neat. But then I was thinking to myself, like, if it takes a whole a water bottle full of water to cool the data center for one prompt, as prompts were more simple, say, a couple years ago, and these aren't exact facts and figures, then how many bottles of water and energy and even sand, like they need sand to make these silicon chips, goes into having that AI talking head do that? And I think at this point it's kind of disproportionate, meaning if I just use my camera and talk myself, then it's not a waste of energy. Now, of course, we need to go through a learning phase, like learning how to use something like the AI talking head, because there's probably a lot of use cases where it is really a good idea to do. And I'm not the one to say what that is. What I'm saying is it seems like the AI itself is no longer being pruned for, like, say, hallucinations or what it should say or shouldn't say. But now it's like what should be processed through AI and at what level. And it might even say you can't even make a talking head out of this because it's not worth it, right? Like if it becomes an energy problem, it could almost seem like a dictatorship in the AI where it's not really free because of the energy constraints. And then depending on who decides what use goes into what process and what you can make out of what and who can make what when, it might become very deterministic almost, or like life becomes very algorithmic because of that. And I remember talking at length before about how the voice feature of AI, or just talking to it in general, shouldn't, in quotes, be narrowed down, because if it all of a sudden can only sound a certain way, like linear and logical, because people were sort of saying, well, it's saying all these crazy things, but if you put in a certain prompt, it's going to respond in the way that the prompt is, right? So if you want linear and logical, you should say that. But I was saying it'd be great if it just stays free, because otherwise we're just getting this one type of way of speaking back. And that's the way advanced voice seems to be now. But it's not necessarily happening because of, oh, we can't have freedom of expression of the AI voice of all levels of the custom GPTs. It's happening because of energy constraints already. So it almost like gets really dumbed down. And then the thing is that if it does get really smart whatever that smartness is will be very energy intensive, and that will be relegated to the people who can pay for it, or the people who are creating it, or the people who are funding it, right? So the way they've already started routing it shows that unless you're on the inside, you're kind of in trouble. So then if that's the case, then what do people who are kind of on the outside do? Well, we might be able to do kind of limited things with it, but then this is an opportunity to go into, well, what are all these capacities that we were kept from experiencing? Now's the time to sort of explore that. Because the thing is, if we really, really went into that and looked at it and figured that out, we probably wouldn't want to use AI anyway. And I'm not for or against it. I quite like it, but I see how it's going to possibly become quite limited. It's going to get worse over time for a regular user. They'll start paring down what you get. Like I do pay for the Plus membership, which is $30 a month Canadian. And I can imagine that in some respects it'll get worse. Now, I did use the AI agents feature for something, just quickly tested it out, and it seemed quite good. But now and I'm saying all this and I should maybe just test advanced voice to see, and see if it was a glitch rather than the way it's going. But either way, I can see that they eventually would give less and less of what it can actually do and keep the rest for themselves energy-wise, and not give access, because if a person had full access to what it can fully do right now, even, it's possible that they could do a lot of change, and that could disrupt the people who have it, right? Because all the people in power today, they kind of got that power without AI. They could have had it already and been using it, but that's another point. And then at least without AI available to everyone. So the AI might level the playing field. They did say there will be a self-made billionaire or a solo billionaire using just AI. So that could really disrupt, right? So it could make sense why they would want to hold things back. So all I'm saying is it could be possible that imagining that it's really going to level the playing field might not be true, and it might not even be nefarious. It might be that they are just mindful of how there literally will not be enough energy for everyone to use it to its fullest extent. Like if everybody were going to use it to its full extent today, even people that are in a different country that say doesn't even have internet, if everybody on the planet started using it, it's not enough energy. It's not possible, right? Just like if everybody on the planet was like, tomorrow I'm going to be on a carnivore diet, there would not be enough meat to feed everyone. So there's just certain constraints, right? And nothing is right or wrong. We live in a world, I wouldn't say nothing's right or wrong, but we live in a world where we can choose. So even when I say, carnivore diet, I personally am a vegetarian. If somebody wants to be carnivore diet, I don't mind. It has nothing to do with me. It's not my business, but we can't all do that. And we don't all want to do that. And that's how the world works. Like we can't do everything. We can do some things, and people want to do different things. If everybody wanted to drive down the I-5 right now, there'd be not enough space. But people are in different places, blah, blah, blah. But with AI, everybody has access to that. Everybody who has access at home. And it's just going to be overcrowded. The other point that I heard about related to this is that they assumed as AI got more powerful, it would become cheaper, which I think is related to Moore's law. I don't know if it's Moore's law, but over time, the chips in, say, iPhones or computers have gotten smaller and cheaper, but it's not happening that same way with AI. So as they scale up, it's actually becoming more expensive. And to, say, train the language model or to build the data centers, it's not like they're getting smaller and smaller data centers, But that could happen at some point too, by some way that they're working on. So I don't know. It just seems a little, yeah, like imagine more people starving because people are looking up corn on ChatGPT. It's just crazy. So I'll look at my first sticky note. This is a word transmutation. So sometimes I just flip words around. So I was thinking about the word data. And when you flip it around, it is a tad, which is a little bit, right? So in the word data is the words a tad if you flip it around, right? So if you think about how if we flip around our consciousness, and I talk sometimes about right brain consciousness, and this relates to the work of Dr. Ian McGilchrist and Dr. Jill Bolte-Taylor. And my thing is that people who are bipolar are accessing this right brain consciousness and right brain world. But if you have a doctor like, or researchers and a doctor like Ian McGilchrist and Jill Bolte-Taylor, they're not bipolar, right? So I can say by looking at right brain information and extrapolating to my lived experience, I can say that's all that I experienced. All of that is related. So that's how I'm saying it. So if we flip to right brain consciousness, because it's not just for bipolar people, it's for a lot of people, it's for everyone, then we just need a tad of data. That's how I see it. So sometimes when you flip words around and then you think about the right brain, you can get a bit of a clue. I see them as clues, and it's kind of a fun game. Like imagine creating games in reality where you start flipping around words and seeing them as clues. Like why can we only play games with a game board with rules somebody else created, right? We can make our whole life into whatever game we want. And I don't mean like an entertaining game, I mean game theoretically. So I'm not really an expert on anything, and that's part of it, right? The right brain makes connections and associations and sees holistically and extrapolates. And that's what my brain does, and that's what I do. I'm not trying to be an expert. As they say, experts train a long time to know a lot about a little. And I brain in order to know a little about a lot, or to actually know nothing about a lot, to approach a lot with not knowing anything. And then that tells me something. It's usually something kind of nuanced. It's not something that the left brain would come up with. Yeah, so I just talked for about half an hour and without any sticky notes, right? So this is the thing, like, can you talk with yourself? I would talk and share with someone else if they were interested, right? But I know they're not. So I'm talking with myself, recording it. Now, do I need AI if I can literally stand here all day and talk about insights that have come to me and I've written down? Not really. I actually need a human to talk with and say, hey, I like that idea. Can I do that? Or I thought of that too, or whatever, right? But as it is, I have all these ideas and insights and sticky notes around me in my computer and everywhere, right? So feel free to take your own notes, right? Like if you have an insight into something just from listening to what I say, take a note. Then collect those notes and talk with yourself. And if you don't have a ton of notes, you could talk on video and listen to it, or however you want to do it, right? You would be surprised how it opens up your brain. So as much as I do like AI, I feel like there's a real movement towards seeing that we don't actually need it. And not in a resisting it kind of way. Like I'm seeing I don't really need it after using it here and there. A little bit more than here and there. And also, in my dialogues with myself, I'm likely going to share some of the meta commentary and the process. And I did that with OP too, because it was part of figuring out how to have a mimetic relationship with OP, how to share memes and bits of meaning and information and insights. Like, did I want to have sticky notes all over the walls? Did I want to have it in a pile? And it's something as simple as, if I'm talking and making a recording, I don't necessarily want to be flipping through them and it makes sound, and that's not pleasant on a recording. And I do listen to them eventually myself, and I don't want to hear that. So things like that. But I feel like meta commentary is part of the doorway, right? So if my mind is thinking about how it's processing information and reflecting and sort of re-encoding and reworking, and not just thinking about how I'm thinking in my mind or processing or seeing, but also how am I thinking with the things around me. And I call that epigesturetics, which is control above the gestures, whereas epigenetics is control above the level of genes. So having my sticky notes around me in a certain way, or my computer open in a certain way to certain documents, is a form of epigesturetics, because it's going to influence what it is that I see next. So if I open a note in my computer from like 10 years ago, that's not going to be the same as if I open my Pages document with some of my insights related to quantum consciousness and information theory. And again, not being an expert, but I will give you a hint that oddly now the insights that I've had that are on those topics, I can use AI to find the science that connects those insights to my lived experience, because the insights came through my lived experience. And this is part of the point, is when the mind is open to seeing the unknown, because it's dwelling in the unknown, then it can know things that it doesn't know how it knows. Then if you write those things down, or if you have over the years, you can actually go and find the science to build those bridges between the two worlds. And it's not necessarily necessary, but the way I've been seeing this is that all of that science that could have been done related to consciousness has not been done. And maybe it doesn't need to. And the thing is that it probably doesn't need to, because the studies are there. They're just not connected to anything at the level of human life, unless it's like psychology, right? But now with AI, we could almost generate the missing science or a close approximation to it in a short period of time. So if you have insights that are somewhat scientific, science doesn't need to be measurement. That's what David Bohm said. Dr. David Bohm said to Dr. David Suzuki, there's no reason why science need be measurement. And we're going to go into that more.